Welcome, Susan Guthrie. I am so excited to be talking to you today. Susan has been one of the leading family law attorneys and mediators in the country for over 30 years, with a practice focused on high net worth and high conflict complex matters. She's the creator and host of one of the top divorce podcasts worldwide, the Divorce and Beyond podcast, and co-founded Mosten Guthrie Academy, which provides gold standard training for family law professionals. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Susan. I'm excited to have you.
Oh, I'm really happy to be here, Tracy. Thanks for having me.
Well, today we are going to talk about the biggest mistakes that people make in their divorces. And obviously, you've got a lot of experience in the divorce arena with divorces that went really wrong, got really expensive. And hopefully in the world of mediation, you've also had experience with ones that have gone really right, where people have come to the table, have come to agreements, maybe even in situations where they didn't think an agreement was possible.
Yeah. I mean, I have seen, 30 some odd years. I've seen it all. And I think that's why this is a great topic for people. So I'm glad we're talking about it because it's interesting. The mistakes are pretty common. And I hope by talking about it, they'll also be easily avoidable.
Well, good. So let's get in and have you start off with the big one. What is the biggest mistake that people make in their divorces?
They make the mistake of assuming that divorce has to be the old-fashioned, I get a lawyer, you get a lawyer, and we're going to fight it out in court. People, I think, automatically presume that their grandparents' divorce or their parents' divorce is the divorce that they are going to have. And they really don't look at all of the myriad other options that are available. And really the path you choose to go through your divorce, be it litigation, you've mentioned mediation already, which is obviously near and dear to my heart, but there's collaborative, there's a lot of different approaches. And honestly, in my opinion, litigation should be your last choice, not your first choice. But so the biggest mistake is, I would still say, sadly, today, the preponderance of people choose a litigated divorce before they take their time to find out what other methods are available to them and perhaps better for their family.
Well, I always like to say that it is really easy to escalate things in your divorce if you have to. If you want to go full on litigation, all out, duke it out, you can always choose that later. But once you choose that, it's really hard to dial things back and it's really hard to de-escalate.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. If you start at DEFCON 3, you are then going to find it much, much harder to go back to being potentially reasonable and cooperative when your emotions calm down. You have to remember at the beginning of your divorce, it's likely when your emotional content is about as high as it's going to be. And it's very easy to make like irrational decisions or decisions out of those negative emotions. And then, a year into your divorce, because now it's like very, warlike and acrimonious, and it's costing you a lot of time, money, and effort, and you want to de-escalate, as you just said, really, really hard to do.
I think, though, when people are going into divorce and have no experience with divorce before, I think there is this misconception that I have to come out of the gate swinging because if I don't, I'm going to look weak and my soon-to-be ex is going to take advantage of me. And so they think that maybe by coming out in a cooperative fashion at the beginning, that they're going to look weak or they're going to lose some sort of tactical advantage in the divorce.
And that's a good point. I don't think it's correct. And here's why. When you go into divorce, one of the other key things I always want people to know is more than 95% of divorce cases go to judgment, meaning are finalized, with an agreement between the parties. Less than 5% actually have to go to court and have a judge make all the decisions or some of the decisions. And that means you need your spouse to come to any sort of a table, and the two of you have to agree together. And so when you come out swinging and adversarial, you are actually driving yourself to the tiny percent that have to litigate, which you and I both know are the most expensive, most stressful, most destructive, as opposed to if you come out with a reasonable approach, with a respectful and cooperative approach, you have a much better chance of coming to an agreement. And you always have to remember, it takes both sides to agree. So your spouse cannot force you into agreeing to anything. So your power is there just as much as theirs is when it comes to agreements.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I understand why people are fearful about coming out of the gates in a cooperative fashion. And I understand, especially if you do have someone who is high conflict or is just argumentative about everything, and you have lived a marriage with them where you had to really grab onto whatever you could, or they were going to take all the power. They were going to dictate everything. And so it's hard to think about coming in a more cooperative fashion because you've been used to duking it out or grabbing what's yours.
Right. And in fact, that sort of leads to another mistake I think that people make all the time is they think that if they're going to go into a cooperative divorce, they're going in alone, right? They think in a mediation, they have to duke it all out themselves. And they're maybe, as you said, fearful. A lot of people don't feel it. There's usually a power dynamic issue in marriages. That's very common. And the reality is, if you have the right support team and you put the right support people there to help you, you actually have more power again in the process because you make all the decisions.
Well, so you are a top divorce attorney, but I know that you actually don't recommend hiring a lawyer as step one when you're getting a divorce. And I think our listeners need to know why.
Yeah, that one always surprises people. And I don't know that all of my colleagues love me for saying this, but again, and this will go back to what I said earlier, is at the beginning of your divorce, you are often in a highly emotional state and you are feeling fearful and a lot of those emotions that we've just talked about. And so your first inclination is to go out and hire what I always call the shark attorney, right? You go out and get the pit bull, you go out and get the fighter. There's an attorney in San Francisco that I remember had this motto that said, when the rings come off, the gloves come on, or something like that, right? You think you're hiring a prize fighter. And so the reality is when you go out and hire a divorce attorney in that moment in time, you are most likely to hire the attorney who's going to take you down the hardest path. And it's not their fault. That's what you hired them for. That's what they do. But they're needed in those less than 5% of cases. And you're probably in the 95% plus of cases. So when you hire that attorney, just like we talked about, trying to de-escalate the adversity, it's also very hard as you get involved with an attorney to switch to another one. You certainly can, but there are pros and cons to that, and costs and time delays when you switch counsel. So I always say, honestly, the very first person that you should get if you're highly emotional is a divorce coach. They're going to help you with your emotional content and help you find the right professionals. And the other person that I think probably comes in first ahead of a divorce attorney, or at least in the same range, would be your financial professional, because almost everyone, as you know, certainly most everyone has fear around money. And so getting some power there is really important.
If getting an attorney is something you want to do sooner rather than later, I always tell clients, I'd like you to talk to 2 or 3 attorneys before you make a decision so you can see who you can communicate well with, understand the different approaches that might be out there to your case, just get a comfort level with them. And I think you make a better decision versus just talking to one and feeling like that's the direction you have to go.
Yeah, such a good point. And, it's not on my list of top mistakes, but I have to tell you, I think it will be from now on, because most people, it surprises me all the time, most people hire the very first attorney they talk to. and they don't bother to go talk to others. And I think it's a speed dating situation. I don't think you marry the first person you meet on Tinder and move into a relationship, right? You go and you date a few people at least so that you can get an idea of what's out there. You should talk. I always told clients and would give them names of other attorneys to talk to, that they should speak to at least 3 attorneys before they decided to hire one.
I love it. Now, I have heard you say, Susan, that it is a mistake for people to say that they are divorcing a narcissist. And we hear so much about this. So why do you think it's a mistake? If I'm divorcing a narcissist, shouldn't I say so?
It has become a very popular tagline. I would say almost everyone these days is divorcing a narcissist. And honestly, what I tell people is it really doesn't matter what the diagnosis for your ex is. And by the way, most of you probably don't have the qualifications to diagnose your ex anyway. But the problem with focusing on that label is twofold for me, at least as a professional. One, it now focuses you on your ex and their behaviors and what they're doing, and sort of a mindset of, I need to change that, or what I dislike even more, how to beat a narcissist. You see all this stuff out there, watch my video and I'll tell you how to beat a narcissist. That is the worst possible mindset to have if you're dealing with someone with those sorts of behaviors. The only important thing about knowing that your ex is a narcissist is that then you know that they exhibit certain behaviors. Whether they're a narcissist or not, there are high conflict behaviors that people can exhibit. And the only important thing about knowing about those behaviors is that you then can identify them and know how to deal with them. And you can focus on yourself. The other aspect of calling your ex a narcissist is that it makes you a victim for most people. It puts you in a victim mentality. I am being persecuted by my narcissist. I am a victim of narcissistic abuse. All may be very true, but it is not putting you in survivor mode. It is putting you in victim mode. And I want to see you in survivor mode, moving beyond that relationship, not a victim of it.
Well, I also think that when you are referring to your ex as a narcissist, it can certainly escalate things more. Even if you don't say it to their face, I think there's probably a pretty high likelihood it's going to get back to them that you have been referring to them that way, either through family, friends, accidental disclosure of it. You might let it slip someday. And certainly if you're trying to resolve this conflict, that is not going to help at all. It's like throwing fuel on the fire, right?
100%. And in fact, I love that you say most people might not say it to their face. Most people actually do say it to their face. And they send them reams of emails with all sorts of information that proves why they're a narcissist. Again, you aren't going to change them. You are spending a lot of your own time and energy in creating your own frustration in trying to prove anything to them.
Okay, so I know that you like to talk about something called ostrich syndrome. How does that play into one of the biggest mistakes that people make in their divorces?
So that is a very common syndrome where, how they say an ostrich sticks its head in the sand, or we stick our fingers in our ears and go, la, 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 I can't hear you. People do this all the time with their divorce, where they don't buckle in, get the help they need, and deal with the reality of what is happening. And they will almost, or they will spend a lot of time looking at what happened in the past without making any plans for the future that is fast approaching. And then they find themselves walking out of that courtroom or getting their signed papers and find themselves in this new reality post-divorce with no plan and no understanding of how they got there. And that means you're not only starting over, but you're starting from behind the 8 ball.
Do you think that people engage in this because the process is so overwhelming and emotional and it feels easier to just not deal and kind of let the process happen to me instead of being an active participant?
Absolutely, right? Who wants to deal with hard stuff? Divorce, I don't love the phrase divorce sucks. The process does. Going through a divorce sucks. But the situation that everyone finds them in is it is overwhelming. It is a lot of emotional content. It is a lot of change. It is scary, all of those things. But if you don't actively take part in creating your new future and dealing with what's happening, again, it's going to happen to you. And this, I do want to point out, this kind of goes back to that hiring an attorney and putting your divorce into the hands of a third party, because that's one of the reasons why I think so many people just want to go hire a litigator, dump their file on the litigator's desk, and then go, all right, you work this out for me. You're the expert. Get it done. And then just hand me my divorce when it's done. What are you ending up with when you put all of your power and all of your decision-making really sort of into the hands of another person? Yes, they are guided by you and you make the final choices, but if you are not actively participating in steering your ship, in making the decisions and plotting your course, then you will end up where someone else got you.
And it's also going to be probably more expensive, because if you aren't participating and you aren't doing some of the legwork in this divorce, it's going to cost you more. I talk to clients about, if you will gather your own bank statements, put them in good order, and hand them to the attorney, the paralegal, you can save yourself hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars, versus having them trying to go through the system, get the bank statements for you, organize them for you, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. Or even better, here's an insider tip, everyone. I loved it when clients would do this. They'd get the bank statements. They would actually go through them, because guess who knows what's unusual in a bank statement? The jeweler that you never got a bracelet from, but there's a bracelet on your Amex account, or the big withdrawal or a bank account number you never knew anything about. Go through there and highlight things for your attorney that look out of the ordinary for you. Do some of that work, and it starts to get you acquainted with your own finances, which for many people is a real issue. Many couples have that bifurcation of duties. And if you are not the one who's been in charge of the finances and you haven't been actively involved in it, I personally think it's imperative that you start to get on top of that during your divorce.
You sound like you're taking a page out of the divorce money guide, because that's exactly what we talk about. I tell people, I can show you some really simple things to help you identify problems in your finances. It's that credit card charge at the hotel in the next town over. It's the jewelry purchase or the lingerie purchase that didn't come to you. It's that withdrawal or that transfer of that bank account. Just like you said, a bank account that you never knew anything about. And I tell people, on the financial side, doing the ostrich syndrome is to your long-term detriment. You have one opportunity to get your divorce settlement and to get this right. It pays to take some time to understand your finances and see if there's any money there that went missing, that is unaccounted for. Some questions you need to ask. You'd be surprised what you can uncover.
And people don't want to look, right? They don't want to know. They don't want to take the time. It's painful. It's time consuming. And you already have a lot on your plate. But you just pointed out, that's the simple stuff. Your attorney is not going, or your forensic accountant or your financial advisor, looking at a bank statement or a credit card statement. We are not automatically going to know what is out of the ordinary or what you did not get. And I can't tell you how many times I have had clients find those hotels or find the jewelry that was never gifted to them, or, expenses that, we found, gambling issues, we found, all kinds of things. But when your attorney or someone who's not acquainted with your lifestyle that you as a family or couple have lived, they don't even know exactly what they're looking for. And you can find it and start them down the road of uncovering this so much faster.
So divorce is really expensive. And I know you like to say that people will cheap out on their divorces in ways that will hurt them. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, this is actually one of the things that I know it seems antithetical, but I am always, always, always telling people that if you put together a fabulous team at the beginning of your divorce, you are actually going to spend less money in your divorce. And most people will argue with me on that at the beginning. They're like, well, attorneys, hey, Attorney Guthrie, you cost a fortune. I can't afford a financial advisor and a divorce coach as well. And what I would say to you is when you have the divorce coach who's there helping you get organized, plot your path forward, deal with your emotions, deal with all of the things on that side of the fence. When you have your financial advisor who's in there doing the investigation, pulling together your budgets, looking at what you can afford going forward, and your legal advisor, you are going to move through that process much faster, be able to make decisions and agreements and proposals much faster and with a lot less stress on you. So ultimately, although in the beginning it may seem like more money, I promise you, because I've seen them both ways, it will cost you less money, less time, less stress. Get your team. Get your team.
I happen to agree with you. I certainly don't think that it's, at any cost necessary, right? You have to be careful about who you're hiring and how much you're spending. And it's not just opening your checkbook up to anyone. It is about making thoughtful decisions.
And one thing I do want to make clear, there are different price points in all of these professionals as well. So I'll run through them quickly. Divorce coaching. If you cannot afford a private divorce coach, most of the fabulous divorce coaches that I know who are wonderful, like a Kate Anthony or a Wendy Sterling, they do group coaching to make it more affordable and more accessible. So if you can't afford a private coach, consider a group coach. If you can't afford a forensic accountant, might I add, the Divorce Money Guide does a lot of that work or helps you do a lot of that work yourself, but with the support that you absolutely need. Or you can do a lot of it yourself and then hire someone to assist you by the hour or on an as-needed basis. And that applies even to attorneys. A lot of people will say, Susan, I happen to, when I was practicing, be very expensive because I was dealing with, as you said, ultra high net worth and high conflict. But there are attorneys at all different ranges. Sometimes it's just because they haven't practiced as long, so they can't charge as much. Sometimes, unless your matter is really complicated, you don't need the most expensive divorce attorney in your neighborhood or community. And there's attorneys you can hire on an as-needed basis through something like Hello Divorce, or you can hire an attorney, we call it limited scope services, where they just come in and help you on that as-needed basis. So there is sort of a different, it's not just all one way. There are different budgets and budgetary options for people in all different ranges. But don't just assume if I go hire an attorney, it's that one and done. Most attorneys we're good at the law, folks. We're good. That's what we learned. We went to law school for 3 years. We then have practiced, if you're like me, for 30 plus years. But what I'm good at is the law. I am not good at the financial stuff. That's why people like Tracy are my favorite people. I can't balance my own checkbook. And that's why, I didn't receive any therapeutic training. I can listen to your problems, but I can't help you with those problems unless there's a legal solution. And that's why your coach is so important, or your therapist, or both.
I love that you laid out that there's a range of options for people because, again, coming into divorce, probably having never been down this path before, people don't fully understand what's available to them. They kind of think that there's one way and it's going to cost me a lot of money and I have to do it this way. And there are so many options these days. So if our listeners want to find you, Susan, where can they find you?
Best place is my brand new website. It's Susan E. Guthrie, my middle initial Guthrie.com. And it's got all the podcasts and all the materials right there.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate all of the advice that you continue to give people going through divorce so that we can hopefully change the divorce landscape for the better and help people get better outcomes in their divorces.
I'm so happy to have been here. Thank you, Tracy.